Hello there. Today we are going to be talking about building community in your classrooms. I am Ashley McCarl-Palmer, aka Miss McP, and I'm here to talk to you today about how we can build community in our classrooms. So, community in your classroom actually has a ton of value in terms of being able to build trust and resilience in science, especially, which is where I teach and spend most of my time. The ability to take risks, the ability to try things that maybe I don't have confidence that the answer for sure is going to come out. And the ability to kind of predict and try and ask questions really is important. And in order to do that, I first have to feel safe in my community. And so creating community, create those safe spaces that allow students then to take risks, to try new things, and to kind of think outside the box and be creative. And so that is kind of the key reason why community for me is extra important, because I find it just allows this risk taking and learning from our mistakes. And that's where true, really great learning comes from. So classroom communities are often places where students can identify each other by names, common opinions, common interests, or things that they're passionate about. It's a place where, as I was saying, students feel safe to take risks or try something new. It's where students know that they're supported and they are willing to try new things because they know that the teacher's creating a space or like a safety net to catch them if they need it. And it also is a place where students feel that they have a voice and they feel that they have value and they have something to bring to the table. And I'm not saying that students have to feel value or bring like new ideas and that thinking every day to the classroom. Sometimes their value can be in areas of like recording or organizing or a lot of other things, or even the role they play can shift and flow as the class goes on and where they feel comfortable and not as comfortable. So students having that voice and having the opportunity to stand up and take part, that's a huge component of it there. At the bottom there, I've linked some links about communities and what they can look like and sound like and feel like in terms of that. Why should you spend time building a community? Community classrooms have a huge advantage to ones that don't have as much community. One is that students are learning more. The key reason is because then the teacher isn't the only source of information in that room. There's a lot of general, really great knowledge in any classroom. And so being able to play off of those lived experiences of the people in the room allows then more than one teacher to be in the room at a time, because it's highly likely that some student will have some background information that allows them to kind of start making connections and understand the content that you're trying to teach. So it's no longer you being the only source of information. There's multiple sources of information in the room. And that it also allows then that kind of growing from each other component and allows that learning to really amplify and bring upwards. Unproductive behaviors often are minimized in a community classroom. This is because there's a feeling of responsibility and ownership. So in a community classroom, communities are created with the community, which allows that ownership to be taken place. And so because the students are part of that design of the community and the design of the classroom and design of the rules and kind of the ebbs and flows and what that classroom looks like, sounds like, feels like, then that means that the students are going to have ownership over that learning community. And then again, leaning back to learning more, you don't have to be everywhere at once. You kind of are able to do this like bouncing around thing and actually make contact with each student every day. I heard a stat once that a student in a secondary school can go through an entire week without being acknowledged by name or even like being spoken to or have a conversation with, just because of that quick turnover in the sheer size of our classes. And so when you create the community, you then are able to get to each student every day, make contact with them and have a conversation with them. And if you aren't able to have an in-depth conversation, they're able to have a connection or a conversation with someone else in that room. And so that allows them then to have that sense of belonging and have that connection point every day, which is super important in terms of our social development too. So things about building community, some do's and don'ts that seem to work really, really well from my experience. One is random groups. Random groups really helps break the social mold. So if I tell students to self-select into groups, they'll often go in with a perceived, like, I'm the leader, I'm the doer, I'm the smart one, I'm the dumb one, I'm the talker, I'm the like sit back and quiet, I'm going to let this person do the job because they'll just pick up the slack if I'm going to be slacking. They have these hats or roles that they like to take on in normal social dynamic groups. So if you shuffle that deck every day and you change the group dynamic every day, then they don't get to wear that same hat and they have to shift those roles depending on who they're with in that day and the topic of that day. And so that allows then the students to have to kind of play different parts, and that forces them to engage in the material. In terms of building community, students can only do focus on one thing at a time. And so if I'm trying to have people learn about each other and learn and build relationships and learn names, then I can't also have new content, because if I'm trying to figure out the social dynamics, then I don't have the ability to focus on content. Or if I'm focusing on content, then I don't have time to focus on the social dynamics. And so if you pull away the idea of content and not include learning new material and just learning the routines of the classroom, that allows students to create the community and have the space and capacity to make those choices. When I say no covering new material, that doesn't mean you can't do things that are related to your course. So for in science, we can still do hands-on activities and experiments. We can talk about what it means to think like a scientist or behave like a scientist or do scientist things. So I can do the skills of the course and start practicing and embedding some of those best practices. But I just don't want to throw new information at them. And so I just wanted to build on that, or just mention that, because sometimes people think, okay, I can't do any content for the first 10 days. That doesn't mean I can't do science for the first 10 days. So I can't, maybe don't add new, if I'm in French, then I'm not going to add new words to them, but we can still use old words and practice the routines that I want to embed into French class. And as we're practicing those routines, you're going to practice and set up your new class norms. So what does it look like in a group? What does it look like in terms of being productive in science? How does it look to learn? How do we talk to someone in a way that has collaborative and productive conversations? There's all these different little rules and nuances and things. And you want to kind of set up that routine so that kids get used to that routine and that flow. So when you start adding that new content to them, it doesn't really throw them off. We just keep with the flow, and it just kind of feels the same as you slowly ramp up into the content world. How we go about building community just involves a little bit of getting to know you activities, and those can come in a bunch of different categories. One thing I should let you know is that in our school, we have multiple different departments working on community building in those first 10 days. And so we've been strategic where different groups or different departments do different beginning opening opportunities. So icebreakers, for example, is something we've been doing in sciences. And so icebreakers are things that are low risk, allow us to start to get to know each other, and it's not in a way that's unsafe. So just make sure that you are minimizing that social risk. Make sure you're minimizing that cheesy factor, but it's something that we often do in science. So for example, in our sample, we had students picking which one would you pick. So we had them go around the classroom, and each student brought one piece of science equipment with them to their group. So they had 3 pieces of equipment that they have found around the classroom. And then of those 3 pieces of equipment in your group, choose which one you're going to use now as a paddle to paddle to shore when you drop your oar into the water. So this is a kind of an example of an icebreaker we did in science, where we were able to start bringing in and getting used to the feel of equipment, but also get to know each other and have some fun and kind of giggle and laugh and get to know each other in a little bit of a different way to help build that community. Our math department loves to use which one doesn't belong, or the 4 corners idea. So essentially what happens is you've got 4 images, and there's multiple answers. So there isn't one true correct answer. And then you're able to grab, students can choose which one they want. Often you can have students just discuss in groups, or I have had teachers as well, physically move. So if you are thinking this is the answer, you go to this corner. If this one the answer, this corner, and you can actually physically move around the classroom. Getting up and moving around is a really big part of the community, because if students can sit in their desks, they can be invisible. So getting rid of that invisibility abilities and being able to move around is really important. So which ones doesn't belong, or 4 corners, is also a really important one, or a really cool one and an easy one to do. So here's an example of which one doesn't belong. So when we look at which one doesn't belong, you could say the Mitsubishi one because it has color. So Mitsubishi, is the red triangle one in the bottom right corner. So you could say because it has color, it doesn't belong, or it doesn't have a circular outline. So you could say it also doesn't belong. On the flip side, you could say the Honda, which is the bottom left, it doesn't belong because it has 4 lines, while the other ones are divided into 3 sections. You could say that the Honda doesn't belong because the other 3 car brands are Mazda, Mercedes, and Mitsubishi, and all 3 of those start with an M. You can also talk about symbols versus letters. So often you can see there's multiple, a square shape versus a circular shape. There's so many different, like, has triangles, doesn't have triangles. There's so many different answers to these, which one doesn't belong. And so that just invites people to start like having opinions and sharing those opinions with each other and not worrying about if you're right or wrong. So that's another really good one that people use. And then English department here often uses what's called attendance questions. So students are asked a question and then you move around the room. So for example, you could be, do I have a sample one? Yes. Which cat are you today? So students would then, as you go around the room, so just as an attendance at the very beginning of class, you'd be like, okay, which cat do you feel like today? And they'll be like 1. And then which cat do you feel like? They'll be like, I'm 6 today because of this. So people can explain their answer or not. And it's just a way for them around the room. So kids can be like, oh, I'm a 1, you're a 1. And so then they can kind of have that, like, just, you're trying to create these moments of like connection between them where they can start getting to know each other in a way that again feels easily accessible. The nice thing with attendance questions too is you can also offer the option to pass, so you can give students the safety of, and you just have to be like, okay, like which one do you feel like today? They say pass, and you're like, okay, awesome, and then just move on. So that is one of the ways that you can also kind of start building the community. And these are just little daily things. Remember, community isn't something that's just at the beginning of the year and then I can let go. This is something that you'll use and come back to and continue to strengthen as the semester goes on. So it's really easy to bring attendance questions into your entire course from start to finish, or just bring them in after certain pause points and do them for a week or two when the community starts to kind of decline. Same with the icebreaker, so that which one doesn't belong. Again, you can kind of sprinkle it through the course. Really intensive, purposeful for the first couple of weeks, and then you kind of like taper off and as you go and just bring it back when you feel like community just needs a little bit of a boost again. Some more food for thoughts. There's a ton of resources available to you when it comes to building community. Building community is centered in a lot of what we call these first 10 days programs. And so the WRDSB de-streaming site has a first 10-day program established for English, French, math, and science right now. There is a math program first 10 days for the grade 9 program and for the grade 10 program. Because we just wanted to give those opportunities for you. And it also allows then, because the stuff in math is different than the stuff in science. So that means my grade 9s aren't getting the same like activity or the same content across both courses, because a lot of times with those first 10 days, there's a little bit of like a shock and wow and kind of fun factor. And if they know the answer to the puzzle already, then it kind of loses its sparkle. So having different activities for those first 10 days is really important. And we do have lots of options and examples for you to use and choose from if you wanted to do that. So that's basically what I wanted to share today about building a community in your classroom. Community is something that I think has a lot of social benefits, helps us kind of learn how to interact with each other, learn how to treat each other as like human beings, makes us good members of society in that capacity, but also then has the side benefit that it really increases the learning over the course. I know a lot of people will talk to me and often say, well, if I spend 2 weeks on community, when am I going to have time to spend it on content? And I'll be honest with you, I find the community-based classrooms actually move through content a lot faster because we have those different students that'll step up and be those like support teachers as we go through the course. Then you'll actually end up having and moving through content significantly faster than you would have previously. So I find that my community, the classes that really gel, we really get through a lot of content quite a bit faster than I would have anticipated. So community classrooms do have the advantage that you'll be able to get better increased learning. You'll be able to get through more content, and your students will also walk out the door at the end of the day knowing who each other is, which is actually a really cool and unique thing in some classrooms in secondary. So if you have questions or concerns, feel free to reach me anytime. I'm happy to help out. Thank you so much for your time today and have a wonderful day.